At 1:45 on a Monday afternoon, an anxious Stacy Castor phones 911.
Police communications, Nicole, can I help you?
Hi, Nicole. My husband has locked himself in our bedroom. He's not answering the phone.
She was concerned about her husband and the way he was acting.
Friday night when we were arguing, he told me to take my sister and get out, and then 5 minutes later he said if I left him, he would make me sorry. I would be sorry if I ever left him.
Deputies head to the Castor residence.
Another officer and I went around the outside of the house, tried to look in some windows, couldn't make contact with David Castor, her husband, at which time we came back into the house and kicked the bedroom door in.
Inside, 48-year-old David Castor, a father of 3, lies dead on the bed.
There was an empty antifreeze bottle on the floor. There was a glass on the nightstand that was half full of green liquid, appeared to be antifreeze.
At first, it looks like a simple suicide, but the case soon twists into an unbelievable tale of evil.
My initial reaction was, what the frig? I don't know what's going on.
This looks like a made-for-TV movie. How does something like this actually happen in real life?
Within minutes of David Castor's body being discovered, investigators with the Onondaga County Sheriff's Department arrived to examine the scene.
David Castor was lying face down on the bed, naked. The sheets were off the bed. He was lying on the mattress, and it appeared as though he had been dead for a short time.
There's mucus coming out of his mouth, out of his nose, which is common if he's ingested something. And there's also vomit all over the bed itself, on the floor, on the victim.
The bedroom and adjacent bathroom are cluttered with piles of bedding and clothes stained with vomit.
The wife, Stacy Castor, gave some initial comments to the effect that her husband had been depressed and hadn't been himself, and there had been this big fight.
David had locked himself in the bedroom, began drinking copious amounts of alcohol. He wasn't acting himself. He was overly intoxicated, throwing up, sick, couldn't walk right.
The police were thinking, based on conversations that they had with Stacy Castor, that David had drank antifreeze and committed suicide.
But as crime scene technicians examine the evidence, investigators are not so sure.
What I noticed right away about the antifreeze bottle is that there's vomit that has come down along the exterior of the bed, and it's pooled underneath this antifreeze bottle, but not on the bottle itself, which I thought was kind of unusual.
There was a nightstand next to him that had a couple of bottles of liquor and 2 glasses, one that was empty and one that was filled with a green liquid.
That glass was almost pristine. It was in excellent shape. It did not look like someone had been drinking out of it excessively, someone especially that was throwing up and sick and sweating and everything else.
Another red flag is raised when a shotgun is found underneath the bed.
If this is a suicide, you have a gun available. One's really painful if this is antifreeze, and the other one's quick.
David Castor was a big hunter. Why wouldn't you use a shotgun? Why would you drink antifreeze?
As investigators sweep the house for evidence, they find another strange clue.
While I was searching the kitchen garbage can, I located a turkey baster. There were no other food items in the garbage can. It was just all papers. And I thought that was a little odd, and then when I realized that there didn't appear to be anything wrong with the turkey baster, I pulled the bulb off the end of it. It had droplets inside it.
Our first inkling was, if this has got, you know, antifreeze in it, what's it doing in the kitchen trash when he's locked himself in the bedroom?
While technicians tag and collect the evidence, detectives try to question David's wife, Stacy.
Stacy Castor is very distraught when she learns that her husband is dead. And she is almost at the point where it's very difficult to interview her.
David Castor's father had died recently, and she described him as being very depressed.
Stacy was David's second wife. They'd been married for 2 years. She says her husband had been going through a difficult time.
David Castor was a depressed, angry, melancholy type of guy whose business wasn't doing very well and was having problems with their marriage and her children and just was not a happy person.
David was saying things such as, what happened if he would die? What would she do? How would she go on? How would she survive?
She described that they'd had a conversation Friday, late in the night until early in the morning on Saturday, where he was talking about burial plots.
David's ex-wife Janice and their son David Jr. present a different account of David Sr.'s position in life.
It just seemed all surreal, like I really didn't believe it, why he would do that. I mean, he was young, healthy, had lots of things that he enjoyed.
I couldn't believe it. He would never, ever commit suicide. Never. He was too strong. He loved life.
The thing that really got to me was the antifreeze. I mean, I think everybody in their life has thought about suicide once, but not something that would take hours of pain and agony, just something quick and get it done and over with.
The medical examiner's autopsy places the time of death as sometime late Sunday night or early Monday morning. The report confirms the cause of death as antifreeze poisoning.
When someone ingests or is given antifreeze, what happens is the body begins to break it down through enzymes in the liver. They form crystals within the kidney tubule, and they actually cause damage and cause death through renal failure or kidney failure.
The medical examiner also rules the death a suicide.
The information that we had, it was that David Castor had some financial troubles, and that there was obviously a container of antifreeze there and a cup that had antifreeze in it. And all that information was consistent with his death being the result of a suicide.
The decision sparks a controversy within the sheriff's department.
The initial reaction was actually split, not necessarily 50-50, but there were officers on the scene who were very adamant that this was a suicide.
I really wasn't sure what was going on, and that's why we began looking at the evidence and deciding, let's let the evidence begin speaking for itself.
While investigators wait for lab test results, they review the known facts. The 48-year-old victim was described by his wife as depressed, yet his son and ex-wife feel he would not commit suicide. Empty liquor bottles and a glass of antifreeze are found on the nightstand. But in the kitchen trash, there's a turkey baster, possibly containing antifreeze. Investigators aren't sure what to think.
My own initial thoughts were, well, let's wait until the forensics come in and then make a decision.
To the detectives closest to the case, it's looking less and less like a simple suicide.
Detectives develop intuition over the years of working these cases, and something wasn't sitting well.
If David Castor didn't commit suicide, who killed him? When the medical examiner rules that David Castor killed himself by swallowing antifreeze, his friends are surprised, and the community is both shocked and confused.
Why would this man kill himself, especially with antifreeze? Why would he do something that was so horrible?
Detectives interview Castor's friends and family. They're looking for some reason why he would take his life, or a reason why someone else might want him dead.
I've got a guy that was dying over the course of perhaps as much as 72 hours. So I have to account for everybody's whereabouts for that entire weekend. And I can't just limit myself to family. I've got business associates, friends, enemies. Does the guy have any enemies?
Investigators run a background check on David Castor.
Does he owe somebody money? Does he have a secret life? Is he a gambler? Is he involved in drugs? And all of those answers kept coming back, no.
David Castor owned a local heating and air conditioning company. It was a family business he inherited after marrying his first wife, Janice Posant.
And in the end, it was worth $300,000. Probably not a lot to everybody, but a lot of it was pretty much free and clear.
His son, David Jr., grew up working with his dad.
I went out on service calls with him every summer. I would go help him install furnaces. All the work we did in the garage, I would be right out there helping him, being the gopher, getting tools for him ever since I can remember.
In the summer months, we went jet skiing, boating, camping, motorcycling, four-wheeling, everything that we could possibly do. David loved the outdoors. He liked to snowmobile. We went cross-country skiing.
After more than 20 years together, David and Janice divorced in 2001. 2 years later, he married Stacy Wallace, an attractive widow with 2 teenage daughters, Ashley and Bree.
It seemed like a regular marriage, no issues, maybe, these small arguments here and there, just like any couple.
Friends that were interviewed described them, David and Stacy, as having a good relationship.
But David's relationship with Stacy's daughters may have been strained.
Ashley and Bree had a difficult time accepting David as their stepfather, and that caused some friction between the 3 of them.
The day after David's death, Stacy Castor has calmed down enough to talk with detectives. She recounts in detail the events of the previous weekend.
Stacy Castor says that Friday night he came home. They were going to celebrate an anniversary dinner. It was their wedding anniversary a couple of days earlier. And because of family commitments, they didn't get to celebrate it. The kids, Bree and Ashley, were going to be at friend's house, so they would be home alone.
But instead of a happy celebration, an argument erupts over an upcoming vacation.
They were going to go away to an amusement park for their anniversary. The thing was that Stacy wanted to take the children with her, and David did not. He wanted the children to stay behind.
She claimed that this was the argument that led to him locking himself in the room for most of the weekend, drinking alcohol.
And then at some point, we're now into Saturday morning, he comes out of the bedroom, she's sleeping on the couch, and they meet in the garage, and they have this marathon conversation talking about various things that have happened to them in the past and the future, and he's upset with her and he's upset with the kids.
Stacy says David then went back into their bedroom and spent the rest of Saturday drinking alone.
Stacy Castor at one point summoned a family friend to the residence to help her move David. He fell out of bed. She couldn't get him back into bed, so she summoned a family friend to help her put him back into bed.
She gets up Sunday morning and she claims that this is the last time that she saw him alive in the early morning hours of Sunday, and then she went out and made arrangements to spend the night at a friend's house.
Investigators confirm Stacy spent Sunday night away from home. They also speak with the family friend who helped put David back into bed.
He says that David Castor was completely out of it, didn't know really who was even in the room, didn't recognize him even though he'd known him for a number of years.
Investigators also talked to Stacy's daughters, 18-year-old Ashley and 14-year-old Bree. Both girls corroborate their mother's story.
They heard David get up and go into the garage with Stacy early morning hours of Saturday morning.
Bree did see David in the bedroom. She did see him on the floor. She knew that there was something wrong with him.
Then, several days after David's death, the case takes a dramatic turn. The preliminary toxicology report comes back with some unexpected results.
In order for antifreeze to be toxic, the amount that one has to ingest is roughly 3 ounces.
David Castor has very little antifreeze in him. He has very little alcohol in him. So one would suggest if you're drinking all weekend long, wouldn't you still be intoxicated? If you had ingested antifreeze at the end of this whole drunken weekend, there should be a good amount of antifreeze still in your system.
There was something going on here.
But as the case is heating up, the county's forensics unit slams on the brakes. Their regulations say they can't process evidence if the case is ruled a suicide.
If the medical examiner agrees that it's a suicide, then it's pretty clear that there is many other things that the investigators could be doing that are legitimate cases.
Detectives need time to regroup. Unless they can convince the medical examiner he's wrong, the investigation is over. Following his death, David Castor's will leaves everything to his wife, Stacy, and nothing to his only son, David Jr.
I was really hurt. We had so many moments together that when you're thinking about passing away, like if you were writing a will, I can't believe that he would write me out.
He was crushed. He was hurting. Does my father really not love me? Did he forget he had a son, his only child, flesh and blood?
Meanwhile, unbeknownst to family members, investigators take the unusual step of meeting with the medical examiner.
Investigators from the Onondaga County Sheriff's Office met with me and discussed the fact that they had more information regarding the death of David Castor. And certainly those concerns that they had were concerns that raised my suspicion as to, was this death a homicide or was it a suicide as it was originally ruled?
The medical examiner's original ruling had prevented the forensic testing of the evidence. Investigators asked the ME to take a second look.
He's not going to rule it as a homicide because he has nothing to show him that David Castor came to foul play at the hands of somebody else. Basically, it's, okay, you convince me that it's not a suicide, it could potentially be something else, so I'll leave it as undetermined.
Changing the cause of death from suicide to undetermined allows forensic testing to proceed. The first tests are on the drinking glasses and bottles collected from the nightstand.
The antifreeze bottle was processed, and there was one partial palm print that was recovered. There were no palm prints available for David Castor at the time, so his palm prints were not able to be compared to that.
The dirty, smudged-up drinking glass found on the nightstand contains David Castor's prints. But the glass with the antifreeze doesn't. It has someone else's.
The results on the glass that contained the antifreeze, there were 3 prints that were photographed that were identified as belonging to Stacy Castor.
We had to ask Stacy and her daughters to come in to elimination of fingerprints because they live in the residence, so their fingerprints will be there. And Stacy, Ashley, and Bree came in and gave elimination prints.
David Castor's fingerprints were nowhere to be found in the glass. There was no smudges. There was no incomplete fingerprints. There was solely 3 fingerprints belonging to Stacy Castor.
Based on the prints, detectives review all the facts of the case. They take a second look at Stacy's statements to police. They also dig into her phone records and discover a surprising inconsistency.
Stacy Castor originally told everybody, the responding deputies and investigators, that she made several phone calls to the residents on the morning that they found David Castor.
That wasn't true. Stacy did not call the house numerous times, and she did not call his cell phone numerous times, as she stated she did.
Several months after the death of David Castor, tests confirm the turkey baster contains drops of antifreeze. The kitchen utensil is also tested for DNA.
The primary interest in the turkey baster is to determine who may have come in contact with a turkey baster and how it may have been used, if at all, in this case.
The analysis of the turkey baster turns up nothing on the bulb end, but a test of the tip reveals a DNA profile matching David Castor.
What was interesting about the turkey baster was that the amount of DNA that was recovered was actually more than what you would normally expect than if someone had just casually come in contact with a turkey baster.
This was huge. Why would there be antifreeze in a turkey baster with David's DNA on the tip if in the room next to the bed there was a glass half full of antifreeze?
quite frankly, I've been in this business a long time. I've never seen suicide by turkey baster before.
The results change everything. Investigators quickly develop a new theory of what happened.
It appeared as though the antifreeze or the ethylene glycol was taking its effect on David throughout the weekend, and that was what was ravaging his system rather than the alcoholic beverages. It's an extreme possibility that while David was so intoxicated, Stacy put this turkey baster down his throat, because it doesn't take more than a couple ounces to kill a grown man. So putting that turkey baster down his throat with that antifreeze was a way to get it down him.
She threw it away, but she threw it in the kitchen, not knowing that we go through the whole house.
Investigators run a background check on Stacy Castor. The results are also surprising. It turns out David was not her first husband to die under mysterious circumstances.
Michael Wallace is Stacy Castor's first husband, the father of Bree Wallace and Ashley Wallace. He died 5 years prior to David Castor of a heart attack.
Although a doctor did say that he died from heart trouble, he didn't have a history of heart trouble. And he was such a young man, it just really didn't make sense.
So we said, you know what? We need to get his medical records and we need to take a look at them.
While Michael Wallace's medical records are subpoenaed, detectives review their evidence. David Castor's psychological profile indicates no suicidal tendencies. The glass of antifreeze on the nightstand had only Stacy Castor's prints. And the turkey baster found in the kitchen contains both antifreeze and David Castor's DNA.
My reaction at that point is this has to be investigated as a homicide, that someone has taken this guy's life.
Then, just as detectives focus in on Stacy, there's another stunning development.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, this is not happening.
With all the evidence pointing towards Stacy Castor, investigators decide to take a closer look at how her first husband, Michael Wallace, died.
Mike Wallace, in a lot of ways, was similar to David Castor. He was probably a little more wild in his youth.
Michael always was a rebel without a cause. He kind of like went way over the limits on just about everything he ever did. He was a good soul, though. He was a good man.
Michael was just 38 years old when he died suddenly in January 2000. Doctors ruled his death a heart attack, but no autopsy was ever performed.
Well, this strikes me as very unusual. A healthy 38-year-old man drops dead in his living room. You would think that you would do an autopsy.
It was Stacy who didn't want an autopsy done on Michael due to the fact that he died from heart problems.
Michael's and my mother was there, and when Stacy said no, she also agreed no. And that's the only reason why I didn't pursue it, is because my mother was very upset over it.
And there's something else. Just weeks before his death, Michael Wallace had visited his doctor.
And the comment to the physician was, "Hey, Doc, I feel drunk, but I haven't had anything to drink."
He said that he was dizzy, nauseous, and like his equilibrium was off, and that when he got off the toilet bowl, he couldn't keep his balance. That was a red flag to me at that time, huge.
Well, that's a perfect description of someone who's suffering from antifreeze poisoning. It has the same affect on your equilibrium, on your senses, that regular alcohol does.
I'm thinking that, oh my God, she killed both of her husbands with antifreeze.
On September 5th, 2007, 2 years after the death of Stacy Castor's second husband, investigators exhumed the body of her first.
Totally devastated and shocked to hear that my brother's body was exhumed, and they did an autopsy on him.
It's a very, very personal issue. Exhuming someone's body, the last thing you want to do is remove someone from their final resting place.
I was watching it very closely because I knew that if it did backfire, I'd be the one in front of the cameras explaining why we took the actions that we took.
Medical examiner Dr. Robert Stopaker performs the autopsy.
There were no obvious findings with the naked eye that would indicate why he had passed away. Specifically, there was no heart disease to speak of, which his death was originally certified.
Samples are taken from Michael's kidney.
The histologic or microscopic examination of the kidneys of Michael Wallace showed the presence of calcium oxalate crystals, or the crystals that result from ethylene glycol ingestion. It showed those crystals present throughout the kidney.
The detective's suspicions are confirmed.
Michael Wallace died as a result of antifreeze poisoning.
I was beside myself. I was relieved that there was something there, that we didn't just do this and there's nothing there. We just disturbed him in his resting place for no reason at all.
It became crystal clear that we had done the right thing. Up to that point, it was a high probability that we were going in the right direction, but you know, we couldn't be absolutely sure until we exhumed that body.
The investigation shifts into overdrive. The day after the test results, detectives contact Stacy Castor.
Stacy was kind of shocked that I was there and couldn't believe it and thought that the case had been closed out and was done with. When I told her that was still open and that it stayed open, I needed some questions answered just to close it out.
Detective Spinelli confronts Stacy over her purported telephone calls made on the morning of David's death.
I asked her how many times she called the residence. She said maybe every half hour, 45 minutes. I called and he didn't answer. I had the records to show that she didn't call that house except once in the afternoon. And that was just prior to calling 911.
And she's very insistent to Dominic. Oh no, it was multiple times. In fact, she says to Dominic, I want to see the records. Let me see the records and you prove it to me. That's how adamant she is about it.
Then she tried to get out of it by saying, well, I used my cell phone. Well, we got the home records, we got the cell phone records, we got them from the business, we got them from every which way. There was only one phone call that was made to either David Castor's cell phone or that residence that morning from Stacy Castor.
Next, Detective Spinelli shows Stacy a photograph of the bottles and drinking glasses on the bedside nightstand.
And I said, Stacy, there's 2 glasses on here. Can you tell me which glass it was that you recall bringing into the room when you gave him cranberry juice? And she looked at it and said, well, when I poured the antifreeze, I mean the cranberry juice, you're confusing me. You're jumping all over the place.
Those of us that were watching the interview went, oh my God. You know, that was a Freudian slip that she couldn't control.
My next question I have is, this glass with the antifreeze, there's 3 fingerprints on this glass. And all 3 of those fingerprints come back to you and nobody else on that glass. Can you tell me why? At that point, she looked at it and she said, I'm done. I don't want to talk to you anymore.
As Stacy gets up to leave, she suddenly has a question for Detective Spinelli.
As I got my paperwork together to leave the room, she happened to catch a glimpse of the turkey baster, and she looked at it and said, what's that? What is that? What's that picture of? And I said, it's just a turkey baster. And she said, why? What is it? And I said, I'm sorry, but you discontinued the interview at this point. I can't talk to you anymore. At that point, I left the room.
Over the next several days, investigators fan out and re-interview the family and friends of David Castor and Michael Wallace.
I couldn't comprehend what he was saying. I looked at him and I said, you think Stacy did this? No. I said, Stacy's my sister-in-law. She's not like that. She loved my brother with all her heart.
My thoughts then were, I wonder what else she might be capable of. The stress is there, the pressure, oh, they know, they're going to find out. What is she going to do next?
A week after confronting Stacy, detectives inform Ashley of her father's exhumation.
Ashley was extremely upset. She couldn't understand why we would dig her father up. She didn't want to believe that her mother would have anything to do with killing her father.
She shut down on him. Then she got on her phone and telephoned Stacy, who was at home.
Mommy, they came to my freaking school.
They came to your school?
They came to my freaking school. I'm really freaking out right now.
Oh my God. Do you want me to come and get you?
No, I have to be here.
All right, calm down and go back to class, all right?
All right, I love you.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
It worked as kind of like a little bonding thing between the 2 girls and their mom. The bad police versus the 3 Wallace women.
Then, just as investigators prepare to arrest Stacy, a shocking 911 call changes everything.
I need an ambulance. My daughter, I believe, has taken some pills. My youngest daughter came in her room and screamed, and I just woke up. Your name, please. My name is Stacy Castor.
20-year-old Ashley Wallace clings to life. Pill bottles and a nearly empty bottle of vodka lay nearby.
Is that her? Oh, she's throwing up. What do I have to read? She left a letter. What? She left a letter? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Oh my God, this is not happening.
The note is 1 page long. In it, Ashley admits to killing both David Castor and Michael Wallace.
My initial reaction was, what the frig? I don't know what's going on.
Get more solved online. As detectives prepare to arrest Stacy Castor for the murder of her husband David, a stunning development. Her daughter Ashley is found unconscious, surrounded by empty pill bottles.
I can remember like it was yesterday that I got notified by the sheriff's department. They said, you know, Fitz, you're not going to believe what just happened.
Ashley leaves a suicide letter admitting to the murders of David Castor and her father, Michael Wallace.
I'm going, you got to be kidding me. Is Ashley Wallace our girl? Did we miss something? Is she responsible for David Castor's death, Michael Wallace's death?
Paramedics rush a catatonic Ashley to the hospital.
We're trying to talk to her. Ashley, what happened? Ashley, can you hear me? This is Sergeant Norton with the Sheriff's Department. Nothing. I'm getting nothing.
Everybody's eyebrows were raised. At that point, we didn't really know what we had.
What kept running through my mind was, man, we've been going in the wrong direction this whole time, and Ashley Wallace is actually our killer.
Under questioning, Stacy and Bree say Ashley spent most of the previous day in bed and then went to sleep early.
The next morning, Bree Wallace gets up to go to school. As she walks past the room, she hears a strange noise coming out of Ashley's room. She goes in, finds her staring straight ahead, making a gurgling noise, and is unresponsive. So she screams out for her mother. Stacy Castor comes running in the room.
After several frantic hours, Ashley slowly regains consciousness.
Ashley, first off, and thought she was in a car accident. She didn't even know what had happened to her.
I asked her if she tried to kill herself, and she emphatically told me no. I said, did you type a suicide note saying that you killed your father and Michael Wallace? And again, she said, absolutely not. What are you talking about? What no?
She didn't believe them until Bree actually sat down with her and told her that there was a suicide note and that it looked like she had tried to commit suicide.
Ashley told them, the last thing I remember is drinking a foul-tasting drink with my mother, who encouraged me to drink it as quickly as I could with a straw.
Investigators face a stunning possibility. Did Stacy Castor try to kill her own daughter?
Never in my wildest dreams did I suspect that this woman would then attempt to kill and frame her daughter.
First thing that ran through my mind was serial murder.
This woman has got to be stopped, and she's got to be stopped immediately.
Stacy Castor is immediately arrested by Onondaga County authorities and charged with second-degree murder of David Castor and second-degree attempted murder of Ashley Wallace. Neighboring Cayuga County opens their investigation in the Michael Wallace homicide.
Stacy didn't shed one tear. Stacy was very stoic.
She's not human. She has no right to be human. Being even thought of being a human. That's how we feel.
The news sends a shockwave across the city.
What shocked the community more than anything else was the idea that a mother would attempt to murder her own daughter to save her own skin, to blame her for the murders of her two husbands. What could be more basic than a mother's love for her child?
After Stacy's arrest, Ashley's purported suicide note is examined more closely.
Most of the notes that you see are handwritten, and they're usually short and to the point. Here, you've got, I call it the War and Peace of suicide notes. It's 756 words long.
What stood out to me about the suicide note was its detail. The fact that it was typed. The fact that it had the word antifree in it, which is a word that Stacy used during her interview with Dominic Spinelli a week before.
It jumped out and hit me like a ton of bricks. When I read that note and saw the antifree comment in the note, no one I've ever talked to knows by antifree, it's antifreeze.
On January 13th, 2009, Stacy Castor stands trial for the murder of David Castor and the attempted murder of her daughter.
It was captivating. The idea that a mother would attempt to murder her own child to cover up for the murders of her two husbands. People wanted to know why and how could this happen.
District Attorney William Fitzpatrick opens his prosecution by calling Ashley Wallace to the stand.
Ashley tells a pretty chilling story. Thursday, Mom stops to get a bottle of vodka and says, I might not be around for your 21st birthday, so we're going to celebrate today.
She came home and she was like, let's get drunk. Let's get just totally drunk.
Her mother sent her into the basement to do some laundry. When she came up, her mother had a cocktail fixed for her, and she started to drink it, and she told her mother, this is horrible, I don't like the taste.
What did you say?
And I was like, Mom, this doesn't taste good. And she's like, there's probably too much vodka in there.
Stacy shows Ashley a trick to get the drink down.
So her mother says to her, take a straw, put it in the back of your throat, and sip it as quickly as you can until it's gone. And that's what she did.
I asked her, I said, well, okay, Ashley, if it's foul tasting, why would you drink it? She says, look, I'm 20 years old. I'm doing something illicit. I'm drinking alcohol with my mom, who I trust, who I never in my wildest dreams thought would try to hurt me. And I wanted to be, you know, cool.
That's the last thing Ashley remembers before waking up in the hospital. Prosecutors argue that a desperate Stacy spiked her daughter's drink with crushed-up pills.
Well, she has no other choice. She's not going to say I did it, so she's got to blame it on somebody.
Who's the only person that spans the bridge from Mike Wallace to David Castor? Oh, I know, my daughter, Ashley.
Most people, when they get tired of someone in a relationship, they move on. And I think Stacy got tired of both of them, and instead of leaving them, she killed them.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please seated.
Stacy takes the stand in her own defense and points the finger at Ashley.
From the defense's point of view, Ashley Wallace was an unstable young woman who just hated her stepfather and wanted to get him out of the way so that it would just be her mother, her sister, and she.
And your answer to this jury, when I ask you to give them the #1 reason why Ashley Wallace killed her own father with antifreeze, your answer is, I don't know. Correct?
That's correct.
The cross-examination of Stacy Castor was one incredible court scene.
This is normal.
For Ashley to be in her bedroom for 17 hours? Sure it is.
Sure it is. Sure it is. It's normal. And she was drooling, wasn't she? Was she drooling normally, Mrs. Castor?
Objection, Judge.
I've overruled it. District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick has a reputation of being a very hard prosecutor. But in this particular case, he was very, very, very aggressive.
My God! You lost 2 husbands to poisoning! Your daughter has just learned that her father was dug out of his grave. You tell your boyfriend that she's drooling normally in the bedroom. My God, is this your testimony?
Yes.
As prosecutors focus on how she killed her husband, Stacy remains stone-faced.
I don't think it takes a heck of a stretch to say what's happening here is that Stacy Castor has been poisoning him all weekend, and in an effort to administer the coup de grace, is attempting to pour with the cup antifreeze down his throat. And because of his inebriated state, inebriation from the antifreeze, she's probably unsuccessful in doing that. So she retrieves a turkey baster and then proceeds to feed him.
Prosecutors allege that she placed the baster in his mouth. DNA from his saliva is transferred to the baster's tip.
That's the scenario that came to my mind after the forensic evidence was in, and that's the scenario that I argued to the jury, and I believe that they accepted.
The trial lasts for nearly 4 weeks. On February 5th, 2009, the jury returns with its verdict.
As to count number 1, murder in the second degree, what is the verdict?
Guilty.
Attempted murder in the second degree, what's the verdict?
Guilty.
It's an affirmation of you know, everything that you've strived for and you've done in this case, and it was a tremendous personal satisfaction of joy for Ashley and Bree.
Huge vindication for Detective Spinelli, because he could have easily let our office determine it was a suicide and close it. And then you would have had 2 dead men that were murdered and no one knew about it.
I was overjoyed with the verdict for the family and everyone, all authorities involved with the case. It was just tremendous.
Dominic Spinelli was awesome. Oh my gosh. Hug, shake his hand, thank him deeply so from the bottom of our hearts.
At Stacey Castor's sentencing, Ashley reads her victim's impact statement.
I never knew what hate was until now. Even though I do hate her, I still love her at the same time. That bothers me. It's so confusing. How can you hate someone and love them at the same time?
Stacey Castor is sentenced to 51 years to life in prison. As of November 2009, she is currently appealing her conviction. Prosecutors in neighboring Cayuga County are now working to build a case against Stacey in the death of Michael Wallace.
She still clings to the fact that it was somebody else, and I don't think that she'll ever accept the responsibility for the actions that she took.
You try to protect your children from everything in this world. You'll die for your kids. She did the reverse. She was willing to have her kid die for her.
While David Castor Jr. mourns the loss of his father, he does find a bit of solace. A friend of Stacey's admits she helped falsify David Castor Sr.'s will.
Stacey signed his name. She had her friend sign the will a month after he had died. They conspired together to put the date on the will.
It made me feel a lot better, like that he remembered good times, not just the bad time.
It's a case that no one involved will ever forget.
You look at the facts of this case and you say, you know, this looks like a made-for-TV movie. How does something like this actually happen in real life?